organic gardening with these different fertilizers. And I remember just like looking at all that as a young gardener and being like, okay, how do you use those? And so I think I pulled out my big organic gardening book and from Rodale, and it goes into great detail about what to use and how to mix the powders and all that kind of thing. And I know now there's a lot of places you can buy pre-mixed kind of things, garden, and that's great. But I think it's kind of important to know, like, okay, what does that mean? Can you tell me what that means? Thank you. Say it louder.
Phosphorus, potassium,
right? NPK. And so, in the chemical industry, that's what they use, and they're all about that. And you can buy the chemical parts of that. But to get that organically, you have to use rocks and different stuff. And I think it was really challenging for me when I was learning. And so I think I just kind of put them in a big bucket, mix it all together and put it in my garden just by the cup. And that worked pretty well. But I think the challenge now is peak phosphorus.
You're with me?
But we used up the phosphorus in the natural world. And in the next, I don't know how many years, it'll be all mined up. And so that's kind of a big problem. And so I was looking at an article online from MIT, which I'm going to pass around to y'all, about possible ways that we could, solve this crisis. So in organic, we use rock phosphate, we use granite sand, we use, what else? So in the minerals plus, it uses all of those. Mm. And you can come up and look at it, or we can pass it around. And rock phosphate and humic. And basically, I really think that's unsustainable for us to continue to mine to be organic. We need to think about how we can be sustainable and get what we need. So I've got a lot of materials here. I didn't make copies of things to pass out because I don't want to cut down trees. So my suggestion is that if you see something in here you like, take a picture. The other thing is that I've put a lot of these materials on our Facebook group under files. And then I think some of them, and I'll continue to put them on our garden website, our austinorganicgardeners.org. So you can look at some of these articles and sort of think about how you want to approach using fertilizer. So keeping that in mind. So this is one of my favorite articles here. It comes from this book, Chemical-Free Yard and Garden. And it's got a great chart in here with all the possible fertilizers that you can use and what they have in it, the NPK. And you can kind of see that there's different choices in NPK other than, the usual stone stuff that we just grew up. I grew up using it, and it's a real wrench to me to say, what do you mean I can't use my rock phosphate? So that's what I brought. Sure.
Kramer, I've been a member since the 70s, early 80s. I grew up in the Blackland, and we didn't fertilize except for manure. And I don't remember my family ever buying a bag of anything except seeds. But I try to stay away from the bag stuff now also, the more chemically processed. What I depend on nowadays are still manure. I really like the Gonzalez mushroom compost. I know some people don't like it. It's high in salts, have to rinse it out. And when we had more rain, that wasn't a problem. But I have used a lot of it. And I fortify it, or I put that on and then use that for a season. The next season, I will add things that I get at the feed store. Callahan's is my source now that I've now that I'm in Austin. Alfalfa pellets, you got a bonus with this. It always comes contaminated with corn, and you can get a crop of corn from it. Cottonseed meal, and these come in 50-pound bags. And if that's something you use or deal with, I try to store them. I don't have a rodent or pest problem, but if you can't deal with 50 pounds in a season, then go in with someone and do buy several. You make a purchase and share the divide up the cost and the goodies. And I use a lot of dispersal, like I say, on the black land. This is also controversial. This is a petroleum industry byproduct. There are tons and tons and tons of it in Texas that need to go somewhere. But this dispersal is 90% sulfur and 10% clay, some kind of clay binder. And it's easy to work with. It's water soluble. They don't melt fast. Like if you spread them on top of the soil and water them, they're going to be there for a long time. And chickens will eat it, which I think is probably not very good. So this I put in the subsoil when I'm double digging. I put this down below. I want to change the electrostatic charges of the particles and open up the drainage of those clay platelets, which really resist letting water through. And then once they get it, they resist letting it go. This should, some people don't use sulfur. It is a fungicide, so you're going to damage some of your soil organisms. So this I put down low and in the ground. The top 6 or 8 inches, I'll have the alfalfa meal and the alfalfa pellets and the cottonseed meal. And I work those in immediately and water them because, especially the alfalfa pellets, I've never noticed any wildlife coming and eating them, but they are livestock feed. That's what you're buying when you buy these 2 products. So I work it in and water it. The next day, you'll see how the alfalfa pellets have expanded. I cultivate it again, water it again, and soon they'll be broken up. You can buy alfalfa meal, but at the feed stores, usually you have to make a special order or go to their where they prepare their pellets, and then you can pay for a bag, go pick it up somewhere else, and also in a 50-pound bag. If you were to use alfalfa meal, be really careful with it. Once it gets wet, you have a very smelly mess, and it dries quickly into a brick. So, voice of experience, spread it and till it in and get it wet. Or a lot of people have used it in potting soil or container mixes. They're high in nitrogen, both of these, but they have trace elements along with them and a little bit of phosphorus also, but negligible. But it's enough that I think if you have organic soil or good organic content in your soil, that the microbes will make it that little bit of phosphorus available to your plants. The only time that I use either bone meal or the colloidal phosphate, rock phosphate, is for bulbs, especially onions, garlic, and I mix that with the compost or turkey. It could be turkey manure or the mushroom compost. If you mix that in with our blackland soil, the alkalinity is going to tie that phosphorus up really fast, probably before your plants have profited from it. And our soil already has tons of phosphorus in it. It's just that it's in a form that the plants can't get to. That's why you put the sulfur right. That sulfur will help it because it lowers the acidity. But also, and I do what's called banding. I dig a trench, put a big layer of the compost with rock phosphate in it, fill that trench back in, and then plant my onions, garlic on top into the blackland soil. The roots will work their way down into that compost, and hopefully for a season, the plant's roots will be able to get the phosphorus that it needs out of that compost before the alkaline soil has leached it all out. Some salts. Some salts Pretty much, I use it only for tomatoes and peppers to prevent blossom end rot. Like, is it magnesium sulfate? One of those elements will help the plant overcome blossom end rot, which is where the fruit sets while it's still green, it'll begin rotting, and before it can ever have a chance to turn red, the rot will work its way through the fruits pretty much. So your entire crop can be lost if your soil is really out of balance. So the Epsom salts, you can get it at a pharmacy out of bulk at HEB. Is that yours? Did I bring this?
You gave it.
Okay. One of my recycled bags. A friend of mine at a brewery had a 50-pound bag of it, so I brought some a meeting or two ago to share. So that's about my only fertilizing, but I do like any of these things, if you can afford them, the rabbit hill, anything with trace minerals is good, and anything with microbial activity in it is even better. I just hope my soil is organic enough, has enough. This is a time track the last week or two. Hold them high. Good. How about lamb's quarters? Have you lamb's quarters since the rains?
Yeah.
Good. And personally, those are some of my favorite greens right now. But after the rain, these all germinated. This is a Indian amaranth that I got seeds here. Someone brought 20 years ago or so, and it's maintained in this strain. This
Makes a red dye.
Yes. The person didn't know if it was American Indian, like Hopi red dye,
It's Hopi
amaranth,
red dye in.
but also the Indians of the subcontinent of India have red amaranth. And this person was a world traveler, but they had no idea which it was. I don't know how that happened. And this is just the grain amaranth that for me always reverts back to the black seeded. It came from a strain that originally was the yellow seeded variety. Look how beautiful those are. After the rain, it comes up like a ground cover. I let it reseed, about an acre, and what I don't eat goes into the compost. And I don't know if any of you can answer this, but I've read several times in reputable garden articles that the amaranth family does not have soil fungal. Symbiosis.
Symbiosis, yeah.
They're
It's like the brassicas too.
Mhm,
They don't need mycorrhizae.
right. So
David could vouch for that.
I was sort of surprised about that.
Yeah,
The plants make such beautiful, healthy
that's
root
why it grows so
systems.
easily in our poor soils.
Just submitted here we go.
Okay, thank you.
It doesn't have, and David's Dave from Wild Root Organic, he's gonna talk about mycorrhizae, which is what the other David is referring to, which is every plant, 95+% of plants. So should talk. But next we have
Let me
Melissa.
finish this one.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So this one is from this book. If you want to look at it, I'm going to pass these all around. This is all the fertilizers that you can use. Some of these are real old articles from 2003. This is a study done by the city. Organic fertilizers beat chemical fertilizers. If you remember Earl, this is Earl's recipe for using powdered stuff and how to use it. This is an article about John Dromgoole and Dillo dirt. This is a basic organic gardening flyer that we've given out for years. This one's called, this one also Forrest did, Feed Your Soil. Rabbit Hill Farm did this little article about their fertilizers. This one is about seaweed and what's in it and how to use it. This one I found in the files today, radishes against squash vine borers. And Forrest wrote this. Apparently, he found that planting radishes around your squashes prevented borers. So that was really good. And this article is the one I was referring to about peak phosphorus. This is another recipe from Earl. So I think those are really fun. And this is a super old Gardenville flyer about how to use fertilizers and why. I just love it. And that's from way back when, probably 30 years ago, 40. Yeah. I put an article in here about how green is your organic soil amendment. So it goes through the list here of how sustainable, et cetera, what your soil amendments are. And this one is using green sand, how to use that one and why. And green sand is a real, pinch because I love green sand.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll pass these around. If you want a copy, let me know. And if you can't get on the internet because they're all
digitized.
They're all digitized. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, next up we have Melissa from Tillery Plant Company. And I'm gonna move my laptop along. So pardon me, excuse these. All right. Can everybody in Zoom here? Okay. Okay, good.
All right. Hello.
Hello.
How are you guys?
We're good.
So I'm Melissa. I work at Tillery Plant Company. I have worked there for about 8 years now. And I became a member earlier this year of Awesome Organic Partners, and I've come to a few online meetings, but this is my first in-person meeting. So it's really nice to be here in person and see everybody. Tillery is a pretty special place if you haven't been there. We are just a nursery, but we have a huge greenhouse. We do grow our own vegetables. We do buy a lot of vegetables, but we grow a lot of our own from seed, from like cool Baker Creek heirloom type of things. And we're always just kind of looking for interesting things. So, I didn't go to school for this. I don't have a horticulture degree. I basically was a home gardener. So I got hired to work at a nursery and then became in charge of, at some level, what we order for our nursery. So I want to offer products that work for people. And I do a lot on a day-to-day basis. So we're going to go through this. I got a lot to get through. So we're going to go additive seed. So why should you choose organic fertilizers? And when we say fertilizers, we're also going to add into this category biostimulants. So fertilizers is commonly what people think that they need, when actually what we're realizing over time that biostimulants, mycorrhiza, there's a lot of other things that you can do for your garden also, in addition to just throwing nitrogen on it. So you really want to think about, instead of just going to the store and buying a 20-20-20 Miracle Grow that's going to feed your plant for a short amount of time, but do nothing else and maybe even harm some other things, you want to learn how to think about it in like a very holistic way. Like you're really cultivating more than just the plant, you're cultivating all of the soil around it, whether it's in a pot or in a raised bed or in an in-ground garden. So when you're using organic fertilizers, it's less likely to burn plants. You still have to be mindful of like the higher nitrogen options and some of the other ones. I haven't used all of them, obviously. There's a lot of different options, but a lot of the chemical fertilizers, there's problems with them polluting groundwater. You know about the dead zone. It is all of the fertilizer runoff from the Mississippi River, killing, it's like thousands of miles wide in the ocean. It's an anaerobic zone, all the fish die, and it's all partially because all of this fertilizer is running off into the ocean, and it's really bad. So, if you're broadcasting 20-20-20 fertilizer, a lot of it could be running off. It might not be the most environmentally friendly option. These things can also, I've heard, kill soil organisms. So if you're using fertilizers that have higher salts, those can kill some of the more delicate microbes that you actually want to be living in your soil. So organic fertilizers will supply a smaller but longer lasting supply And they also have a lot of micronutrients, which you're not going to find in synthetic fertilizers. And there's just so much research being done. I talked to a lot of experts doing this, putting this slideshow together. I took a deep dive, and I talked to a lot of people. David, who's here today, we get local Fertilizer from him. And I talked to the worm guy. I talked to all these people. So I'm going to break it down for you. So you really want to think about cultivating a healthy neighborhood. So it's not just about, you know, having a healthy plant, you're just feeding your plant. You're really thinking about it in a bigger, broader sense. So the plant is like your friend, your bud. And the soil that she's in, I've been thinking about this metaphor for like the last month, you guys. So just stick with me, all right? Give me a little artistic way. So the soil that she's living in is her neighborhood, and you really want to create infrastructure for her. So it depends like how long you've been in that garden. So when you're first starting, you have to do a lot of this stuff. You have to build up a lot more infrastructure. So in the beginning, soil amendments, you're putting down roads, which the nutrients can be transported on. Humic acids are going to be like cool businesses and jobs that are going to be attracting people to come and hang out in this hood and live in this neighborhood. Mycorrhiza fungi is going to be like plumbing that's pumping water and also nutrients in from outside, from further away. The mycorrhiza can bring in extra water and nutrients. Fish emulsion is going to be kind of like a little power company. It will have little batteries stored in the soil, so your plant can kind of find those and charge from those. Photosynthesis is her taking light from the leaves and making a pie. So essentially she is secreting sugars from her roots, and those sugars are eaten by the microbes. The microbes come, they're friends, they hang out, they bring nutrients to share. It's like a big potluck. And in return, they're receiving extra energy to decompose all these amendments for plants. So whatever other amendments we were putting in the soil get decomposed. When the microbes die, then all of the stuff that they've been eating, all of the rocks and all of the things that they've been sharing, then it's available for the plant. So essentially, the microbes are feeding the plant after they die, but they have to process it. So it's not like nitrogen deficiency is not because there's not already nitrogen in the soil. I go cans of soup, but it doesn't have a can opener, so it cannot eat the soup. So essentially, we are trying to figure out how to get our plant healthy, living in a good neighborhood, having everything it needs. If you're planting your plant in soil that is dead, that doesn't have all of these good microbes, that doesn't have nematodes and worms and bacteria breaking down all of these amendments, and the whole relationship that has evolved over time, then you're basically like planting your plant somewhere. It's not going to thrive. It's not going to do well. No infrastructure. No infrastructure means that no nutrients can be cycled through the soil. So it's all about getting the nutrients to cycle through the soil. So we talked about NPK. Nitrogen is going to be for your green foliage, your leaves. Phosphorus is one for your healthy plant growth. So if you're coming to me and you're like, well, what do I need? You really have to think about what is your purpose. When you're first planting, you might be wanting to just try to get a greener growth, like more growth, more leaves, more plant body. But then after a certain amount of time, you're going to want to go in with a higher phosphorus generally because you're trying to get things to bloom, make flowers and fruits. So there's different fertilizers for different times of the plant's life. And also you want to think about like, well, some things like basil, you don't want it to bloom. So you're not going to give high phosphorus fertilizers to a basil plant. So just kind of keeping that in mind when you're thinking, well, what's wrong with my plant? That's the first thing and then when it comes to nitrogen deficiency, nitrogen can be pulled out of the soil pretty quickly, especially potted plants. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the nitrogen is not in the soil. Like I said, maybe your plant just doesn't have the can opener. So there are some ways I'll be talking about that you can green up the leaves pretty quick. But don't just assume that you have nitrogen deficiency means you can go and buy a high nitrogen fertilizer and put it on your soil and have it be fixed. Doesn't always work that way. phosphorus deficiency can look like this. I wanted to show you a picture of the purpling of the tomato leaves. So maybe you've seen it before, maybe you've been growing tomatoes for many years. So another time that you might think, well, do I just get a high phosphorus fertilizer, or is there something deeper going on? So now we'll just talk about some of the products that we sell at Tillery. And the first one is compost. This is like, you know, something that people will come in and get by about a couple bags. You know, you can top dress your plants with it. You can plant your new starts with it. I always will add a little bit of it when I'm planting new seedlings, starts. This bag costs, I'm going to talk about cost just because, you know, we do want to think about like doing things effectively. It's like at one level, you know, you could pay $20 to have it your own gardening experience of growing cucumbers at home, but you could also buy them at the store for $5. So we want to kind of avoid that. Like, with compost, it's about $13 for this bag of 1.5 square feet. You can get it in larger amounts from like Whittlesea or soil companies probably will have it. Geo Growers probably has it, but I read a lot of different things, I will say, on like Facebook groups about, you know, different qualities of different local company soils. So it doesn't hurt to do some research when you're buying something like this. It provides a slow release source of macro and micronutrients. So it's going to feed your plants, but I want to say I've found varying levels of NPK for compost, and I don't think I've seen it higher than like 444. So it's still pretty gentle in the scope of NPK numbers, where, you know, we're comparing to like inorganic things typically can be higher than 20 up to 50 I've seen in the industry. Like people will use that. You can also make compost at home. You can make compost tea. It might be a much more affordable way to do it. There's lots of YouTube videos of different ways people do it, different methods. Depending on what you have, people will just utilize what they have. And compared to other manures, chicken manure can be a little higher in nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, calcium, and I think the turkey, and I think they're just less hot of fertilizers than some of the other ones. So you do really want to make sure, it's really important to make sure if you're making it yourself, that your sources that you're getting everything you're making your compost with are free of herbicides. So I have talked to a lot of people, and I've seen a lot of people the last couple of years who are experiencing basically Roundup toxicity in products that they've bought. There's a product on this table from an organic company that has been sued because Roundup was found, or someone I know actually, was found in their products. So, you know, just because a huge company is labeled organic, we're having a huge issue. Basically, there being no organic hay left. So the cows are eating this inorganic hay. It's been sprayed with Roundup. Basically, sorry, but they're spraying it with Roundup. The cows are eating it, and the Roundup is coming out the other end of the cows. And then people are making compost with the cow. So it's causing a lot of issues for gardeners. I'm following some people along their like remediation journeys of how to get past getting a huge load of compost that was infected with this Roundup and using that in their high panel, and then just having no luck with their tomatoes for that entire year. Like
Tell her that I'm listening to a webinar.
and all that. So there's
Well, I
certain
don't want her to think I'm ignoring her.
when planted with this Roundup. So what people will say is plant beans germinate so fast that and look fine, like the leaves are absolutely fine, there's no damage to them. That's one way you can tell that your compost is safe to use. So if generally, you know, I've never had problems with like this compost from Tillery. I use the bags all the time, but it's just really hard to guarantee that anything is organic because it's just tainted and there's no way to test it. And I know of, you know, companies that are having this problem and they're having to go through and do all this testing to try and figure out what the source is, and they can't find it. So it's just something to be mindful of if you are making your own compost. And it's kind of sad. So next, worm castings, a little happier of a note. Worms are awesome. They do really cool things. So they have a highly active, they make worm castings, which is a highly active biological mixture of bacteria, enzymes. They break things down really fine. So they are basically doing all this work to make nitrogen, all of the amendments, they're eating it, breaking it down, and then feeding your plant directly. So to me, when I first started gardening, the fact that the NPK was 100 was kind of like a little bit of a block for me. I thought, well, it must just not do very much. The numbers are low, but it really has so many other benefits. They have hormones, they have just all of this growth you'll see. And really you don't need a lot. You do want to kind of tamp it down into the soil because it's kind of delicate. All of those microbes, they are kind of delicate. You don't really want to be storing it in the sun for very long. You want to use it kind of fast because these things, you know, they kind of need moisture. They're living. So when you're letting them dry out, you dry for long amounts of time or get really hot, they don't do well. Vermicomposting is really easy. So we do sell these big bags for about $16, and you know, they're about this big, and they're from San Antonio, they're local. And then we have worms from a guy who is called Austin Worm Lab, and he grows them all in his apartment. And he has helped us, give us advice to grow some in our house so that my husband can grow worms for fishing, which I'm all about because I want to use some of those worm castings. So we just have a little tub and he drilled holes in the lid. Is it just in soil? Just in soil. And the worm guy said, feed them flour. And when they get going, you can feed them other stuff too. You can watch YouTube videos and go down the wormhole. But there's a lot of resources. We just feed them flour and they're growing, and it's really cool. It's just an easy way to add a lot of nutrients to your yard. Bat guano, another one that you think might be a little cheaper considering how many bats are in Austin, but it's a little bit more expensive, $20 for a little over a pound. And it has a little bit higher nitrogen that you're gonna find in other organic fertilizers. It has some bioremediation capabilities, so it would be good to add if you were trying to get rid of some Roundup that got into your compost somehow. And it also has calcium. So calcium is really important for creating a really strong vascular system for your plant. So it's gonna give it a really strong stem and leaves. And when your plant is young and growing, that's really helpful. So bat guano is great. I use it on my house plants a lot too, just top dressing the house plant, because the bat guano also has all that good stuff in it that's going to feed all those microbes that we were talking about. So it goes back to like your plant, you know, the longer you have a plant, I've had some house plants for years and years now. And if you're not still feeding the soil, then the soil is feeding on itself eventually.
And also high in phosphorus.
And bat guano is high in phosphorus, which is good. So this is blood meal, and this little cat is called Palm, and she lives at Tillery, and she's currently up for adoption because she doesn't do very well with dogs, and a lot of people bring their dogs to Tillery, so this might be a plug for a cat adoption. 20% off lifetime discount if anyone adopts this cat. I'm joking, but I'm not joking. She's a very sweet cat. She'll be a very good house cat, but she does not like dogs, and we have a lot of people bring their dogs through, and we don't want anything bad to happen to anyone. So that's Palm, and this is the blood meal next to her. And I've actually never used it before the last month. I experimented with it once I was asked to do this class because I was trying to try a few different organic things I hadn't tried before. So it has that high nitrogen, and I planted my fall tomatoes with it maybe 3-ish weeks ago now. It's been a couple weeks now. And they look great. They're growing really fast. I actually planted some Armenian cucumbers with it too, maybe a month and a half ago, and they're amazing and exploding. And I was like, why did I plant two? I actually don't think I needed to plant two. I'm about to have so many cucumbers, but that's a problem I'm willing to have. So this is another one that has really high nitrogen content. So this is one you can do probably more when you're starting your plants or starting things out, you want them to kind of grow fast, especially when we have a really short season. I feel like we have such a short season for growing tomatoes and things. And I mean, it was basically non-existent this spring, but the smell of it also, I didn't notice a bad smell to it, but it supposedly will repel deer and rabbits. So maybe cheaper if you're getting it in bigger sizes from places like Callahan's, and that might be the case with some of these. So the next thing that you're going to want to do after mending your soil is inoculate your plants with mycorrhiza. And we have a few different options of mycorrhiza that we sell at Tillery. We have these little packets for $11, 1 ounce, and this will last you so long. How many uses do you think this is?
Well, there's a 2-year expiration on that, but it'll treat, 1 ounce will treat up to 211 1-gallon plants.
That's a lot. So 2 years, see if you can use it in that amount of time. Do we still carry these? I have one at home, but I wasn't sure if we still carried these at the store.
5 ounce issue.
Okay, so we do still
I
have
was
these.
going to open that up and look at it, actually see what my price is, if I want to.
You all should check it out. We can pass it around.
This is
And
called
then-
ultra fine mycorrhiza.
So that one you dissolve into water, right? And you
Yep.
can do a soil drench with it.
Yep.
And you want it to inoculate the roots. You want it to touch
We
the
get on the root
roots.
system.
Yeah, so
At any stage of the plant.
I just had a few questions for him. The other picture that I have on the screen is the bucket. We also carry these buckets, 6-pound buckets for $18, and those are the granular fertilizers. So those are a little bit more like little nuggets. And the NPK of that is 432. So it does have some nitrogen in there and a little bit of phosphorus and potassium too. But it also has that good mycorrhiza. It's gonna be really good for inoculating things, helping them bring water from far away, nutrients from far away. It's like a symbiotic friendship. They're like, doing solids for each other. So my question for David is it safe for use on, I mean, I'm not gonna tell you why first, I'll tell you why after. Is it safe for use on potted 4-inch seedlings?
Say it again?
Is it safe for use on like potted 4-inch vegetable seedlings?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Very easy, very simple.
I'm just troubleshooting right now because we had some seedlings that we started and the normal girl who was doing them wasn't there that day. So I had a different girl do them. And when she mixed the soil, I had her put in some of the granular. And I don't know if she just put in too much. It could have been that. But basically, it was a few different varieties of little seedlings, vegetables. I can't remember what. And none of them did well. They all just slowly died.
Well, this is a fertilizer. That is a chicken fertilizer with mycorrhiza in it.
Is it too strong?
She might have mixed it too strong.
That was my first thought, is it was either too strong.
The mycorrhiza itself wouldn't have done it.
Right. Well, someone said, well, maybe because it has a relation, it's a fungus, so it could be related, maybe dampening off. Would
No,
you
if
relate
it
it?
would done anything, it would have gotten rid of the damping off.
All right. So there's my question answered.
Yeah.
So I think we did use a little too much because it does kind of like swell up a little bit
Right.
as you have it, and then the pots got really tight, and I think it maybe got like anaerobic, possibly. I'm not sure. It was kind of strange. I think she just packed too much in there. But everyone that I talk to uses this. I know some really amazing gardeners who use this. I use this in my garden. We do sell the 40-pound bag for $35. So if you have a huge garden, you can broadcast it all through your garden. You can use it when you're planting at first. You probably don't need to use it more than like what? Oh, he has a bag here. It's like twice a season. Yeah, so you want to get it inoculated, and then it'll be there for forever in the cells of the plants.
Yes.
All right, so he's going to tell you more about that. So that's one of our favorites. We do use it in our garden at Tillery. This is my dog Hank with my favorite liquid, oh, it's the granular seaweed actually. And he hangs out at Tillery a lot, so if you come by, you might meet him. And this is $29 for 1 pound granular. This does last a long time also. It's another great investment. And we do also carry liquid seaweed. The NPK is very different though. The NPK is another one, which for seaweed, you're really not buying for the NPK, so don't think about it like that. But the NPK of this is like 1 through 115 or something. So that third number is like 15 compared to 1. So I go for this one. It's just like the super strong one. And I will use it in all my potted plants all the time. Cannot overdo it. It's a very sustainable, renewable resource. Seaweed grows all these feet per day. So it's growing. We're never going to run out of it. If you use it on the roots, it will help develop root maps. If you use it as a foliar feed on the leaves, it's going to help you develop more lateral bud development. So it's going to give you a bushier plant. It contains amino acids, which will improve the uptake of calcium, and calcium uptake can help prevent fungus in turn. It will strengthen your plant's defenses or boost their immunity. So anytime I have people coming with like bugs or stressed rehab plants, I always will send them home with seaweed. It also is great for temperature stress, which we have it in both directions all year long here. So it's great for that. And it will improve the soil structure over time. So it'll lessen the compaction. My soil is pretty heavy clay. So I'm always using it as much as I can, seaweed. It also contains auxins, which is the rooting hormone, and cytokines, which will stimulate cell division to help promote growth. So it's great for, I soak cuttings in it if I'm doing propagation. Even I've heard like putting cut flowers in it, they'll last longer. It'll make your food taste better. If you're doing it on veggies, it will just do so many different things. There's like so many studies. It's amazing. Get some seaweed. This guy's selling it, in fact.
Yeah.
She's been selling it for years.
And you make it out of seaweed. Which kind of seaweed do you make it out of? Maxi crop. Okay, cool. Yeah, people, if you look on YouTube, you'll find videos of people making all of these fertilizers, people going to the beach and collecting seaweed, people like planting fish with their tomatoes. Like there's all sorts of ways that you can do this stuff. So this is another one that we've really just started using this year. It's called Dakota Rev, and it is an organic growth stimulant. So the small bottle is $18. You can get a big bottle for $34, and you can get a ready to spray bottle for $12. And the first time I used it, I was just in a hurry and I grabbed the ready to spray bottle, but it's just a better deal. It's a little diluted. So if you get the bigger bottle, you dilute yourself, and it lasts a really long time too. And it's another you can use as a foliar feed or on the roots of the plants. And it's really made a big difference, a noticeable difference in my plants. I just put it in my big tank in my greenhouse where I propagate plants, and I'm just noticing a lot of growth and a lot more green leaves. And it's basically, he described it to me as, it's like this ancient glacial lake that they are excavating the humate. It's a living humate, so that they'll live the humus out of it. So it's this unique reed sedge, and he said it has all of these old, it was an ancient lake bed, so it had all of these crustaceans that have died there. So there's a lot of microorganisms alive there still, and they make it into this product, and it's not going to clog your sprayer, so you can put in your spray bottle, spray it as a foliar feed. It's an organic source, which a lot of sources are not organic, and carbon, humates, microbials, has all the good stuff that you really want your plants to have. So I've definitely noticed a good change in my plants since I started using it. So these two, some of my last ones here are notable mentions. They are not organic, but I just wanted to say on the note of becoming organic certified, OMRI certification, it is kind of difficult. And I've talked to a lot of local people who are trying to get certified to do it, and for whatever reason they can't, or they just decide they don't want to do it, because to become OMRI certified, sometimes you have to heat your product up to a certain level, and that's cooking all of the good beneficial microbes in it. So essentially, if you're buying a compost with mycorrhiza that's certified OMRI, the mycorrhiza in it got cooked to however many hot degrees and it's dead. So it is a waste of your money. So you know, just because something isn't certified organic, even if it is certified organic, doesn't mean it is not going to have snafus here and there. But in some cases, you just want to make sure you're using the right product. So with these two, the first one is Fox Farm. It's a very popular brand, and they do have some organic products. And, you know, I chose these two because they're marketed with vegetables on the front of them. So you think vegetable gardening. So, you know, I don't personally think that they're that bad. I don't, you know, the one on the right, Bioblast, the NPK 777. So it's a balanced fertilizer. It has B vitamins in it, which is going to help. One dose of B vitamins is going to help turn on your plant's immune response. So that's going to make your plant be able to fight bugs and fight pests, fight disease a lot better. So I do use that Bioblast. I do use that Fox Farm. I don't necessarily think they're bad, but they're not technically organic. And I threw this one in here. I tried to get us Neptune's Harvest. I've heard a lot of good things about it over the years. It's basically just fish and seaweed fertilizer. It might have some other good stuff in it, but we can't get it at our nursery for whatever reason. Maybe you can buy it. Does anyone use it? Where do you buy it at?
Right outdoors, not for gardener.
There you go. So for whatever reason, they can get it. When we asked our rep, she was like, I don't think I can get, yeah, you're just gonna have to ask for it every week. And we're like, all right. So yeah, we will get it if we can. The owner of our nursery, he's a big fan of it. I've never used it, but I hear really good things about it. And basically it's got that seaweed in there, it's got fish emulsion, and all of this study, they have studies that have shown that it will outperform 20-20-20 fertilizers. And that's how good of a job fish and seaweed together can do compared to all these synthetic fertilizers that aren't good for the environment anyways. You'll get increased yields of fruit and vegetables, improved shelf life. You're going to increase your plant's natural sugar, which basically is going to make your plant not delicious to all of the bugs. If you have the right Brix number, to my understanding, then it's a lot less susceptible to pests. You'll have better colors, flowers, better foliage, and it's just gonna make your stuff good. Although it does stink. Fish emulsion stinks. Don't use it for a company. So far. All right. So to recap everything, what all do you need? Well, how long have you been gardening in the same garden, and what kind of infrastructure have you already got in place? Have you already built roads over time? Have you added organic compost or materials? Have you added compost? Have you done any of these things that are going to help feed that microbial life? When I first started gardening at Tillery, in our parking lot, there was this much dirt with asphalt underneath it. So we had to bring in a lot of dirt ourselves. So, you know, just kind of thinking from your personal starting place. And then, you know, every season when you're planting fresh, you want to plant some compost, some slow release amendments, maybe some nitrogen amendments. When you're planting your seedlings, you want to inoculate them with mycorrhizal fungi. When you plant them, get them healthy when they're young and they're growing, to keep them healthy and to keep feeding your soil and to keep building that infrastructure over time, so that, you know, eventually the soil is healthier and you don't have to do quite as much work, because these beneficial guys are helping you out. And there's a lot of things I didn't talk about. I didn't talk about molasses. You could water with molasses. Yeah, see, we've got some empathetic molasses lovers over here. So basically, and then mulch. You also want to make sure you're mulching, because if you do all of that good stuff and then you just let your good compost sit on the top of the soil and it's getting baked by the sun or washed away, then it's not going to do very much for you. You really need a thick layer of mulch to help keep your moisture in and help keep your soil happy and healthy. And then the last couple things or mistakes that I see or that I've made is no amount of fertilizer is going to make up for a lack of light. So if you're trying to make something flower and it is in too much shade, it is not gonna do anything to give it a higher second number of fertilizer. Remember that annuals have a lifespan, so things like cucumbers, 70 to 90 days, and then they usually will succumb to disease and pests, and that's just normal. So if you're trying to get things to live, if you're trying to get your spring cucumbers to survive and live and make you cucumbers all year long, you might just need to kind of readjust your expectations of your plant. And then, there are other things that I didn't touch on, like the soil pH is going to influence the nutrient uptake. And if your plant has root stress, it might prevent nutrient uptake. So there's really a lot of things you need to consider if you are dealing with any type of deficiency. And the last little nugget I found was that if there was a Virginia Tech 10-year study, they used 5 parts humic acid, not humid acid, like I wrote on my slide, but humic acid plus 2 parts kelp. And they got 50% better results than either product used alone. So you really should, for best results, use some humic acid with the seaweed, mix them up. That's my secret go-to these days. And it makes a huge difference. Really, really seeing a big difference this year.
Do they have products that already combine them, or you have to combine them separately?
The only humic acid one that you might be able to find some products that like have them both in there, but I use the granular seaweed and then I use the Rev. That's my name. I don't know of a product that has both of them that would work better than that. But does anyone have any other questions?
You tried BLK water with the Rev yet?
I have not. BLK water is what is in. I've heard of that water.
It's biologically derived from biochar. It's also alkaline. It has amino acids as well, and also has folic acid.
Oh yeah.
So all that good stuff you add it to your honey. I'm a molasses lover, so
nice. Nice. Well, I haven't, and I'm really excited to hear what he has to say because I want to learn about biochar and I don't know anything about it. And so I'm excited to kind of get some, be here tonight and talk to you guys about what you use and what you like. And I do have coupons for everybody. So for sitting through my long talk, you get 20% off of some fertilizers or amendments over at Tillery. Come see us on the east side, and that will be good for all of David's products too. So you can get his mycorrhiza, and we don't have a whole lot of the ones that they were showing, but all the ones I had on the screen, plus a few more. And we're gonna say anything else.
There's a kitty available too.
Don't forget, if you know anyone who needs a cute little black cat, just in time for Halloween.
You touched on Roundup a little bit. Does Roundup ever break down if you've used it before? Or does it stay there forever? Or do you know?
I from the little research that I've done, it does not break down easily. I don't know the answer to that, but I don't think it breaks down like as easily as they say it would. Because I feel like when I've searched a little bit, they're like, oh yeah, it breaks down just fine if you look at their website. But then you're seeing people in the industry just having a lot of issues with it.
Also, in your seaweed that we're talking about here, doesn't seaweed come from the ocean, have a lot of salt in it?
Seaweed does come from the ocean. Another interesting, fish comes from the ocean. So people, I've heard about being concerned about fish having mercury, but I think that the way that they process the seaweed, they're probably
Northwest, no, they don't. The process did not have any extra salt or anything. It just lives in a beautiful mineral rich, environment. It doesn't have any extra salt. Has a little bladder to remove it. It's cool.
So what did he say about the salt?
He says it doesn't have salt in it. It lives in a very mineral rich environment. So it has all those good minerals in it. Healthy for humans too. We should all be eating seaweed.
Yes, I ate it on the way here, actually. Didn't even put that together. Is there
A couple more questions?
more questions? How do you use agricultural molasses?
So you're gonna have to come to my nursery and talk to Brian. He's my coworker who orders all of these products, and
We're
he
gonna
does
have
a lot
Mary
of
talk about
gardening.
it. She actually just came and got in my ear and was like, we forgot to talk about molasses. Someone talk
Well,
about
here,
molasses."
listen to Mary tell us.
Okay.
Please.
Molasses I found really beneficial after the apocalypse because it reinvigorates the microbes. Joe, I'm gonna talk more about that, I'm sure, but man, it worked. Because I think that whole top layer of, so that's the main use I use for it.
All right. Any other questions for Melissa?
It'll feed them.
And you can
It'll feed all those
stop
nice
sharing your screen as well, Melissa.
I don't think we need to use it, probably like a couple times a season, the most.
I use my whole big bottle on the whole garden.
Did you use it a lot?
I used all of it up.
Maybe it just depends on, like, if you're going through something traumatic, if you're trying to like recover, you may use it a lot more, but if you're just trying to kind of maintain, you may not need as much.
What do you think that's for?
So we sell, there's a couple different options for vegetable gardening. People really like pine straw mulch, which we do sell that. Anyone with pine straw mulch, which is good one. If you want some mulch, I think we offer it cheaper than some other places around town, I've heard. The pine straw mulch is nice. I believe it's slightly acidic, which is good for your vegetables. And also like our soil and other super outline, so it kind of balance as it breaks down over time. But you really want to be thick. People also will like hay, but you do have different problems with finding organic hay or it having tons of like brambles in it, or you put it out and then there's all these seeds in it, so you get this first flush of like growth that you have to kind of rake out. So there's kind of annoying things about hay, but I use mostly pine mulch these days. I think we sell it for like around $18 a bale.
All
It's kind
right.
of hard to find some years. I had it finally someone's been asked, and I was like, yes, please, so let us, it's on your mulch, so,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was great. Thank you, Melissa,
Yeah,
for
thank
coming
you
and
all.
sharing. We'll have those coupons here on the table as you leave, so don't forget to grab one. So next up we have David from Wild Root Organics. We already learned a little bit about mycorrhizae, but he's going to go into it for about 15 minutes here. And yeah, let's go. Oh.
Good way to start off, right? So anyway, listen, I'm Dave Steinbrenner. I'm the owner of Wild Root Organic and Mycorrhizae Company. I started the company about 8 years ago. I've been in organics for a little over 40 years now. And I started actually when I was at Texas A&M. That's where I learned about organics and mycorrhizae. A couple things that people start off at first: the phosphorus and the problem with phosphorus. The number one thing mycorrhizae does is get phosphorus out of the soil. That's its main thing in life, is to get phosphorus. It does many other things, but phosphorus is number one. So before you go adding a bunch of phosphorus in your soils, think about mycorrhizae. If there's any phosphorus, I don't care if it's bound up in the soil or what, mycorrhizae will get it out. It produces enzymes and exudates that will actually break it down and take it to the plant. If you put too much phosphorus in your soil, you put mycorrhizae to sleep. It just actually shuts down the plant, says that's enough. Mycorrhizae is all these microbes you talk about. Mycorrhizae is the orchestra. It is the conductor of the whole thing. It tells the bacteria, the other fungus, how to get nutrients when a plant needs it, how to get it. So mycorrhizae, fungus root. I hope y'all get a chance to get a picture of this. this is what the mycorrhizae does for your plants. This is for ectomycorrhizae, which I'll give a real brief description of Ectomycorrhizae is what your oak trees and pecan trees use around here. Ectomycorrhizae means it's on the outside, forms a little mantle on the outside, and it transfers nutrients and water through the cell membranes from the outside. Endomycorrhizae penetrates the cell wall of your plant with the hyphae, goes right into the cell. They have this relationship back and forth. Plant says, hey, here's some carbohydrates. I need nitrogen, I need iron, I need magnesium, I need phosphorus, I need zinc, I need copper. All those things the mycorrhizae will go get. It's all done chemically. It's an amazing process. And I started off learning about mycorrhizae from a gentleman named Paul Stamets up in the Northwest. Paul has a great book and a movie called mycorrhizae. It's called Mycelium Running. Thank you. And another gentleman, Jeff Lowenfels, has a book called Nothing But, anyways, it's a book on microbes, it's a book on bacteria, teeming with microbes, teeming with bacteria, teeming with fungus. And now he's got another book. I don't know what it's called. He's just come out. He makes it very simple. And one of the things I worry about in the organic industry, yes, ma'am.
Paul Stamets, didn't he also do Fantastic Fungi? It was on PBS?
Yes, ma'am.
And the book.
Yes.
That's one of the ones we can.
I met Paul at a garden show in Seattle in 1990. Ponytail guy, real hippie looking dude. And I told him I was doing a landscape up in Bellingham, Washington. He said, well, you need this. Just put this in it. And I said, what is this? He goes, it's a plant called Plant Tap. This product there. Everything just did amazing. I mean, it was just amazing. Anyway, it's mycorrhizae. So that's where I learned about, my mycorrhizae. And I've been hooked on it ever since, of course, but mycorrhizae, we talked about different like Ericaceae, blueberries don't use mycorrhizae. The brassica family does not use mycorrhizae. They doesn't bother it. You can have a potato plant and a broccoli plant growing right next to each other. Tomato will use the mycorrhizae. The broccoli plant won't. They produce their own antifungal web that comes out. It doesn't kill the mycorrhizae. They just don't. They're not interested in it. That's kind of a neat thing about it. Have y'all heard of mycorrhizae before today?
Can you share about how our soils here in Central Texas, what you know about how much exists in the soils? Because you were telling me on the Zoom the other day that there's, because we have such a poor soil, so little soil,
Right.
we have a little bit of it.
Right. We do have some really nice areas in Texas that have a lot of mycorrhizae. But we go in and the home builders come in and they, strip all the land, tear it down, compaction, overgrazing in ranch lands, fires, just, a multitude of things. Farming, they go in and till, they tear up all the mycorrhizae. Really, the story of mycorrhizae is a 4-day class. It's an amazing thing. I put it on, I do landscaping. Every job is inoculated, everything, plants, grass, trees, and then mycorrhizae all start working together. So in the hill country, oak wilt is a huge thing. You have your plants inoculated, or if they're naturally inoculated and heavily, out in the middle of nowhere, and have a good healthy stand of endomycorrhizae and ectomycorrhizae. I don't know if you ever seen, every now and then you see these fields of, trees that are dying from oak wilt. There's 4 or 5 trees that just look great and never die. Well, they're healthy. They have a great immune system. And a lot of that has to do with the mycorrhizae and the relationships, because they will form called a mycorrhizosphere around the plant or the tree. Other diseases can't get in. Nematodes can't get in. So it's just like having a really strong gut bio. Okay, so that's what it's all about. Any other questions? I know time is, yes, ma'am.
I know that in our plans over the summer, like nitrogen breaks down and makes your soil poor, and that's why you mulch and all that kind of stuff, soil poor. My question about these kinds of products is, how do you establish a quality, keep it going in your soil, or do you have to just keep purchasing this every season and keep inoculating your soil again and again?
So I don't want you inoculating your soil. I want you inoculating the plant.
Okay,
Mycorrhizae has to have a living host.
okay,
And that's why farmers and stuff, if you go out and you inoculate, say you do wheat or you do corn with the mycorrhizae. And if you have a no-till system, let's say you come in and you overwinter with rye or, yes, exactly. That will actually keep the mycorrhizae alive.
okay.
Those mycorrhizae don't need one plant. Mycorrhizae will have relationship with all the different plants. In your garden, one mycorrhizae may go into, your petunias and then your St. Augustine grass and your shrubs. It's all the same plant.
Okay, so it'll move around your yard and leave it alive.
Right. Well, I tell people with our product in your yard, figure 1 spore per square foot.
Okay,
So like that bag could do about 12,000 square feet of lawn, because that little spore will germinate. The minute it does, it's going to start spreading high feed. It's going to inoculate all the other grass quickly, and it does quickly.
okay.
So technically 1 time.
But you need moisture to keep it going. Like you don't want your soil to dry out.
Oh, well, you don't want to dry out in that root system. As long as that plant is alive, the mycorrhizae is alive.
Okay.
So that's why it can stand, spore by itself can't stand really cold temperatures, but when they're in the root system of that plant, 20 below zero.
Okay.
All those sugars, everything. So yeah, the mycorrhizae gets sugar from the plant. Then the mycorrhizae gives everything else back to the plant.
Okay. So as long as there's something living, and
Yes.
the ground is protected, shaded, that kind of thing, it'll be fine.
It doesn't have to be shaded.
Okay.
Mulching is,
Good.
I do an article out in the hill country, and the last sentence I say is mulch, mulch, mulch.
Right.
3 inches of mulch and your soil is just nice and cool underneath, even when it's 105. So, yes, ma'am.
So we're having extreme days. Extreme cold, extreme heat. And what would be some advice you have about keeping your mycorrhizae alive in these extreme events? And it's projected that we could get up to, 120.
Well, in that packet, technically they say 140 degrees. I don't, I say 120 degrees is, I don't even like to leave it in my truck in the summertime. So, and don't freeze it in this form, that form.
The temperature shifts in the environment and keeping the mycorrhizae alive in the ground.
Oh, in the ground, once it's in the plant, it can take as much extremes as the plant can take. So they grow, mycorrhizae is way up into North Canada, in wheat fields. It grows all the way up into the plants. It's very hardy. Not only that, there's 9 species of endomycorrhizae, so the plant can pick. Some mycorrhizae likes it warmer, some like it cooler, so they go down 2-3 feet deep into the root zone.
So we've had these real big drops, like 50 degrees. So that seems to be part of the kind of.
Sure. If your plant is inoculated with mycorrhizae, you will not see these drastic effects on your plant. I was hoping that the gentleman from Circle C would be here tonight, because he does the maintenance and landscaping for him. Jesus is not here. I don't believe. He got in trouble after the first rain this last go around. Everything just exploded out, and he got letters saying, "You're overwatering. What are you doing wrong?" He goes, "I have not watered." So that's what happens. It's a really fast recovery.
And you told me on the phone that Circle C is like one of your big projects that you all have done, all organic.
It's all organic.
And everything's inoculated.
Everything's inoculated. Lawns, so they, like I said, they were getting letters saying, "Why is your lawn green?" And it does do that. It really does. So the hyphae on the mycorrhizae will extend the root zone anywhere from 100 to 1,000 times. So if my arm is the hair root, the hair on my arm is the hyphae to go out into the soil. And they get everything you want. But interesting on the phosphorus, because I was really biting my, I was wanting to get after that because if there's any phosphorus in your soil, you don't need to add phosphorus. If you have a rose, a flowering plant that says, man, we got to have big bloom, we need phosphorus, mycorrhizae just goes and gets it. I mean, just that easy, that simple. Yes, ma'am.
So sorry, when you talk about you want to apply it to the plant, do you mean like,
To the root.
so you want to drench as soon as you put it in the ground?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yeah, the earlier the better.
okay.
If you're taking a little 4-inch plant, I like to take the mycorrhizae, put it in the spray bottle, shake it up, just spray the root, then plant it, and you're done.
Okay.
Can you come back and use it after you've gotten established gardening landscape?
Absolutely.
Then you're just broadcasting dry or you're spraying it mixed in water?
I like to, if you're trying to inoculate an existing flower bed, I take a tiny shovel, maybe pop some holes, mix it up take a half an ounce in a 5-gallon bucket, and just pour it in those holes. And just cover it back up with some mulch or compost or whatever, and you're done. That's it.
How close together? How close together are those holes? What do you mean?
It depends on what kind of plant you're planting, how big your plants are, where your plants are.
Okay, I'm not planting anything. I'm trying to make what I've got look a little bit healthier and not quite so emaciated.
Just in the root zone.
Yeah.
Just put it in there. It doesn't matter. Just 2 or 3 in the root zone.
Okay.
Okay? Yes, sir.
When making your solution, is there any concern with like city water pouring or anything like that?
Yeah. Yes. But there's a really neat thing to do. Get some vitamin C. And just 500 milligram vitamin C, take it out, drop it in a 5-gallon bucket of water, let it sit for 20 minutes, you're good to go. It really works. And the chloramine, the new thing, it does it. It binds it up so it won't affect your plants.
Fluoride.
Oh, fluoride? No, it doesn't do anything. No, fluoride does not bother it. No. No. Most fungicides don't bother mycorrhizae either.
Right, any other questions?
Yes, ma'am.
We have, we don't have to say oxidate yard, we have the blue stem yard.
Uh-huh.
How would you use that mycorrhizae? Because I don't see any mushrooms growing on, it's just native land. I mean, we don't do anything to it, but mow it once a year.
Will this look nice?
Well, it doesn't right now, 'cause-
Right. Just go out and just put some out in the, just scatter some out in the.
And you were asking about mushrooms too, like, one of the things, like a lot of mycorrhizae, they don't even fruit mushrooms, is that
Right.
just the reproductive organ?
Yeah.
But a lot of trees will, so like your choice edible mushrooms, like chanterelles, truffles, those all are mycorrhizae, or like.
Ectomycorrhizae. Yeah.
Yeah, and so those, if you're adding it with trees, like you may get some of those sort of things start to happen, but you also need spores of that particular.
You will see so my product has the endomycorrhizae and ecto, and when you plant it like a live oak or anything actually, the ecto will actually go saprophytic, which means it'll actually just take the dead, mulch or compost you have and break it down. You will see some mushrooms come up. Those are just little ecto mushrooms popping up, and they usually live for just hours. I mean, they just pop up and then they just melt down. Yes, ma'am.
Ink caps, right?
Yes.
Those little pleated ink caps.
Yep.
That people are always.
Those are wonderful. Those are wonderful.
Yeah, those are really good.
They're doing a really good job.
I was going to say that I know someone who, for their grass, they use David's granular, so instead of the powder form and watering it in, they broadcasted the granular, because that also has nitrogen. And so it just keeps, like he was saying, everyone's grass looking amazing.
That Ryan.
Lawns. Ryan,
Ryan,
yeah,
yeah.
I had a long chat with Ryan,
Yeah, Ryan's doing an amazing job.
and he said he used just like, that your fertilizer is the only one he uses.
Right.
But on native grass, 'cause we don't have.
So on the native grasses love mycorrhizae. So just go out there and just get it started. Just, pour some around one of the plant and some more, because it will spread fast. Thank you, guys. I'm sorry I was so abbreviated. But we couldn't do it.
All right, we're moving along to Petey from Locoal, and we're going to learn about biochar. All right.
Right. Good evening. Thank you guys for coming out on a Monday. It's getting late, but I'm glad everybody's here. I'm actually really excited to be here. I grew up just up the hill and I spent a lot of my childhood in this garden area, so it's a very special place to me. One of my first memories of my grandfather was him teaching me the Mount Laurel trick, where you rub the seeds on the ground and then burn your hand with it. So I remember learning that 4 years old up here. So. So I'm a co-founder of Locoal. We founded right here in Austin, Texas. I started in 2014 with the idea, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what we've done so far. But here's kind of the talking points. I know I'm supposed to talk about biochar, some of its benefits, also how it's made, why all biochar is not the same. Then I'll kind of tell you a little bit more of my backstory about how we got where we are and what I hope to do with my brand as we keep growing in the future. So I, born and raised in Austin, was in a startup, really fun startup called Hey Cupcake. It fell with the owner falling into some trouble. I went home and I meditated under this tree right here. And I asked it what's its favorite rock band, and it said the Almond Brothers. And I was like, oh, I love tree puns. And so I instantly thought of this line, crossroads seem to come and go, from Melissa from the Almond Brothers. So this is Melissa. She's my inspiration. When I asked her what I wanted to do with my life, she told me biochar. I didn't know what it was. She's about 108 years old, and the property was used by the Native Americans to run their cattle across the river. So that's why the crossroads seem to come and go. It makes sense to me. But first off, pop quiz. Biochar right here. How much surface area do you think 1 gram of biochar has? 177 square centimeters, 320 square feet, 2,400 square feet, or 43,000 square feet? Don't answer right now. We'll get there, but just get your brain stimulated a little bit. Because what is biochar? So the catch-all name for biochar is any organic material that has gone through this process called pyrolysis or gasification. They're very similar, but the idea behind it, when you heat materials with oxygen, they combust. If you have a closed area without oxygen present, you actually cook off the gases and you capture that carbon in a physical product. That's very beneficial. So oxygen, fire. No oxygen, biochar. The great thing about it here, you can see all this porous nature. So when we talk about the surface area, you can see that's a very small picture there. And this was the first bag of charcoal I made, because biochar wasn't really known when I started making it. So Terra Preta, you're probably familiar with this down in South America. Very neat idea of mixing biochar with ceramics and organic material in the soil. This soil grows every year because of this mycorrhizal, because of the benefits down there. So you can really see the difference in this carbon dense soil, and it's called Amazonian dark earth. So that's kind of where the understanding of biochar for me started, but then it was really just making it. So the first thing you really need is make sure you have a consistent feedstock. It could be manure, it could be corn cobs, it could be pecan shells, but all those have different characteristics and they're all processed differently and make different biochar. So not all biochar is the same. The neat thing, eutectic point, that's a fun science word. You might be able to win in Jeopardy someday. So we have boiling water, that's at 212. Eutectic point is where physical and gas separate. So it's the idea of cooking a physical material for the gas to cook off. And that synthesis gas is methane, wood tars, formaldehydes, actually very beneficial gas. The second thing to worry and focus on is we don't want to go out of our way to cut down anything that didn't need to be turned into biochar. So we really want to find solutions for waste. To grow a cornfield and then use all that corn for biochar just doesn't make sense. So we focus on end-of-life materials, specifically pallets. Pallets unite everybody. Right now, about 5 applications of a pallet falls apart, goes into the landfill or into a wood chipper. It can't really be used as mulch right now, so they just sit, break down, cause all that gases to go through the atmosphere. So we're able to divert that. So what we do is we divert it, we convert it, then we transport it to a carbon sink partner. So that's kind of the process of the way we look at biochar. Any questions so far?
Yeah, I
Yes.
have a question. pellets, sometimes pellets are like, they have some chemical pellets.
So the pyrolysis gets up to about 800 degrees Celsius. It cooks off everything. I'm actually going to show you a lab report here. It's going to show you all the potential heavy metals that we've actually eliminated from our materials. So how does it help? Well, the porous nature of biochar, it actually is absorptive, which absorbs moisture, and adsorptive, another science word, where it can hold on to nutrients and chemicals. So while it's holding on to that, it actually increases the aeration, and it replaces those mined materials like peat moss, perlite, vermiculite. As we mentioned, mycorrhiza over and over and over. My favorite part is a beneficial habitat for these mycorrhiza. Think of it like a condominium down there they can hang out in. And then we can safely store carbon in the ground for terra preta. It's still in the ground for who knows thousands of years. That opens up new opportunities for carbon credits for farmers that can actually find new revenue streams while they're offsetting their fertilizer costs. So here's a lab. It doesn't really show up that well, I apologize, but just a couple of things to point out. As we mentioned, not all biochar is the same. So ours comes out at 82.7% carbon. If you use like a cow manure or chicken litter, it's going to end up being about 20%. So that high carbon percentage is very important. pH value, so it is alkaline. Again, different biochars are going to have different pH values. Ours is an 8.4, beneficial for some plants, some not. If you look down towards the bottom, you can see we've eliminated arsenic, cadmium, chromium, cobalt, copper, lead, all those toxic chemicals that could have been associated with the wood. That's all been cooked off through this process. And then one other thing to look at here on the right side is the particle size distribution. Again, depending on the feedstock going in, you're going to get different size biochar on the way out. So hardwood is going to maintain the best structure and the largest pores for benefits. So here we are, 230 square meters in 1 gram. So that's, I was trying to do the math in here. It's like 2/3 of this room on the floor. That's how much surface area is on 1 gram of biochar. So you put that in the soil, it's going to have that much more surface area for moisture and fertilizers and bacteria to be able to bond to. So you're increasing the overall holding capacity of that soil with biochar. Here we are. So I like to point out 177, that's a baseball. 20 feet is a so kind of get a feel for what those numbers are. Again, so many applications. We've identified more than 30 uses for biochar. Since we're here today talking about organic gardening and agriculture applications, I'm going to focus on those. But everything from building materials, pharmaceuticals, insulation, water purification, high-tech graphene. Really, the applications are so numerous when you start with the premium charcoal. So we went with the leaders. We found a study with Tyson Poultry. They use our biochar down in Gonzales. It was amazing for the chickens and for the employees. We actually reduced methane, ammonia, and E. coli in the coop, limited the moisture, which causes a problem in chickens called bumble feet. And we actually learned that Asia spends as much money on the feet as we do on the chicken here. So Tyson has increased their bottom line while helping increase their chicken health. So we thought that was a win-win situation. They're not going to change their ways until we can show them that it's more profitable. So Tyson is one of our first customers. This was not grown in Texas. This is a cannabis plant, but this is showing that we are capable of growing. Again, this is the mycorrhiza, the habitat there for the roots really to take. So this was grown by a farmer up in Vancouver, Washington, side by side, same environment, same lights, same fans, same oxygen, cotton. So we just show what biochar is really capable of doing for soil, again, because it's the root structure. And proud of this one. We actually won the City of Austin Circular Economy Showcase by using biochar and a wattle sock. So you guys have probably seen these for construction sites, reduce water runoff and soil erosion. When you put biochar in there, it actually binds to toxins. And so we can limit the stuff going into our rivers that are causing the algae blooms and our dogs dying. So we're excited to start working with golf courses and some of the larger development zones, because we used to have impervious ground cover in Austin. I don't know what's going on with that stuff anymore. So a lot more runoff, and we have to capture these toxins somehow. And then last but not least, pecan orchards. Really, the fertilizer prices, their irrigation prices are ridiculous right now. This is a pecan grove. They bought the Birdall farm near Bastrop, and they have 11,000 acres, but their costs of inputs this year are slightly more than they're going to make on the pecans. So it's not even making sense for them to run their farms anymore. So we're helping them put biochar on the ground identify new carbon credits, but also reduce their fertilizer and irrigation costs. So it's a win-win across the whole board. And how did we get here? So as I said, I started in 2015. Nobody knew what biochar was really back then. It was really hard to sell. Great Outdoors, natural gardener. They were like, what is this? So I had to go a different route because I was still passionate about waste diversion, upcycling materials into something new that was, that was useful. So these are the original gasifiers that I built. The first one was Charlie, Charlemagne, Charlotte, Charisse, and those for Charmos. So the idea is a 55-gallon barrel, a 30-gallon barrel inside that you fill with good wood. The outside, it is, you turn it upside down. So 30-gallon upside down inside, fill the outside with trash wood. As soon as it gets hot enough, it actually releases all that syngas that I was talking about, and it cooks itself. So actually, it cooks itself and it puts itself out. So these would take about 24 hours to produce charcoal, and back then it was lump charcoal for grilling applications because that's what people knew what the charcoal was. And I loved it. I was selling it across stores, and I thought, how do you really scale this? So I had this custom-made gasifier retort. You can see the white smoke coming out of it. That's clean methane gas that could be ignited. So we realized on my next scale up, we can use that gas to power a natural gas generator and put electricity back into our grid. So I started producing, started sorting, and I started distribution. And I wanted to upcycle everything. So these buckets are from the county line, and I would package them to deliver them to, oops, we'll go back real quick. So yeah, as I'm producing biochar, I'm filtering out the lump charcoal from the biochar. So I have these two separate products that I'm trying to sell. One of them is in a cubic bag in this size, and I had a little bag for grilling applications. And the buckets were really the most important because I was able to reuse those and really build a lot of volume of production with one customer. And it all kind of came down to which partners I was working with. So as I mentioned, Birdall Pecan Farm, I grew up with Brandon Birdall. He started the sawmill out in Cedar Creek and makes beautiful tables and mantles out of all these old growth trees, but has so much wood he doesn't know what to do with it. He was having to pay to have it taken away to burn in a cement farm. So I worked with a dumpster company. I collected all this wood and had it sent to my house where I turned it into lump charcoal. So I upcycled that waste. But I was still trying to sell it. And I had to sell it as lump charcoal. And it was still frustrating because at the end of the day, I really wanted to, to make a product that I cared about. But I did really have a lot of fun doing it. So I landed in top-notch hamburger location. And I kind of turned myself into the milkman of charcoal. So I would show up every morning with buckets of charcoal. They would brew with that. And the next day I'd replenish their supply. And over that course, I diverted more than 1 million pounds of wood and delivered 60,000 pounds of charcoal to top-notch. But I still got tired of making something and then lighting it on fire. And I don't know, I knew the goal was always biochar. And so being from Austin, decided to go back to grad school. There's a program here called the Masters of Science in Technology Commercialization. Because I looked at it, I was able to take waste, turn it into potentially clean energy and carbon, which at that time was now becoming out of value on the market. It was there I met my best new friend and business partner, Miles Murray. He went through West Point. He was an Army veteran, got blown up by an IED. So we come from I'm the hippie, he's the business side. But we really work really well together. We're awarded an Air Force grant because we realize there's a huge need for these biochar production. As we talked about, Tyson needs it, the cannabis industry needs it, the pecan industry needs it, but we can't produce it here in Austin and ship it everywhere. It has to be small and mobile and near the waste location. It just doesn't make sense to ship waste. And so that when we reduce the transportation, we can actually create smaller little communities of smart grid production and more sustainable practices. And then we had to go from my single batch 24-hour production to a scale up 24-hour a day production. So we went to Texas A&M, worked with the Beta Energy Lab up there to really understand what technologies were available and what we could do as our team to get there. And so we developed Local Rainmaker. This is a containerized renewable energy producer. Fits in a 20-foot Conex container. This was designed and built for the Air Force under an innovation grant, so we can send it to military facilities and provide backup energy. And then they use the biochar to clean up some of the restoration on the military bases. And kind of how I'll walk through how it works. So we put waste in one area. it heats up really hot and that close, there's no oxygen available. At that point, the synthesis gas comes out, we scrub and clean that and power a natural gas generator. The biochar is cooled on site and able to be packaged and shipped right there to our customers. And so this is our final product that we built, sitting up in a warehouse in Vancouver, Washington, with more goals to continue developing for the pecan industry and the poultry industry to really provide that on-demand renewable energy, but also the really premium biochar production. So I thank you guys. There's Melissa again to thank you. And I did bring biochar for everybody back there. And please check out our website. Email me with any questions. I love gardening. These guys have a lot more knowledge on what's going on under the soil, but biochar is really helpful to increase that. So you're going to decrease your fertilizer costs, decrease your moisture, hopefully increase your plant growth.
Questions?
Yeah, question. So what, like in my garden at home, how can I use this?
So the best application for it is going to be like in raised beds or potted plants, because we want to use about a 1 to 10 ratio. And so this is 1 gallon is going to be great for like a 10-gallon pot.
Okay.
If we look, the next application will be like if you were to aerate your yard, we can do a broadcast system that way to try to get that, because it needs to get down into the soil.
And it's for moisture, or it helps with moisture retention.
Yeah, moisture retention.
And you said like nutrient retention.
Okay. And so, yeah, it's really helpful, as he was saying, like the inoculate. If you were to soak this biochar with a little mycelium, mycorrhiza, it would just explode when it hit the soil.
Okay.
Yeah.
And all that sugar.
All the sugar. Yeah.
The mushroom.
These usually in the areas, you say,
So this is technically very similar to charcoal. It just has a very low ash content. So the system we have, yeah. Yeah. So you could use this in a, I've made aquaponic systems. So I use that, raised beds. Yeah, there's, please check it out. There's, dozens and dozens of applications for it. And that's why you guys get to take some home and play with it.
So you mentioned using it at Tyson. How did they use it in particular? Like I'm thinking about like apple.
Sure.
Like to use it as an example.
There's actually 2 neat things. So we went to A&M and had to use it as a feed, micro feed additive, and it actually increased their feed conversion. So they ate less food put on a pound, and it decreased their mortality. So they're able to eat it, no problems at all. It binds the toxins and passes right through them. Then that compost is now supercharged with carbon too. What Tyson did is they mixed it in with their pine shavings so that the litter control on the ground, because every time the poop hit it, absorbed that moisture.
So what was the ratio? Do you know what they mixed it with?
They did 5 different studies, and I'm still waiting for that report. But we'll put it up on our website. We'll shout it from the mountains as soon as we have it. Yeah.
Okay.
And I did work with a quail farm in Bandera where they dropped their ammonia from 10 parts per million to 0. So we do have that official data from them too.
I mean, that's the thing with you don't want to breathe that.
Right. And your neighbors are too.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
How much does that cost?
Free right now. We unfortunately, again, the transportation issue is the hardest. So I don't like e-commerce. I don't want to pay for a box and all the shipping that goes into it. That's the only way we can really sell it right now, unfortunately. Or we sell it in a whole 18-wheel truck, which is the most efficient way for us. But if you want to have some at your store, yeah, I'll get you some for your store. We'll figure out a pricing. Yeah, well, love it.
I'll introduce you to Brian.
Okay, all right, perfect. Yes, we're ready for it. And we have plenty of biochar. Yes.
I think our group had someone present on biochar. We're thinking that.
Okay.
I don't know how many years ago.
All right.
Was it you?
I don't remember. I did a video. That was what, 2 years ago, right?
There were 2 guys.
You can't, it was like right at the beginning of the pandemic, someone came to one of our online meetings.
It was before.
That was
I
it.
was telling you, it was so complicated. Why did you say?
I try to keep, yeah. Okay.
Do we have any other questions? We're gonna do a giveaway too, a trivia
Yes.
question.
Yeah.
And do we have enough biochar for everyone, or do we?
I believe there should be plenty back there. If everyone wants to grab some, if not, please email PD@local.com And I'll figure out how to get you some.
All right, and then we have this nice big bag of premium wild fruit organic. Yeah, wait. Okay, you're distracted. Those who want to win a bag of wild fruit fertilizer, I'm gonna ask a question, and the first person to raise their hand, or let's just say yell it out.
Yeah. Or no, you should.
Maybe raise your hand.
Yeah, raise the hand.
I'm sorry, people on Zoom. Snooze, you lose. So what are the two types of mycorrhizal that David talked about?
Indoactive.
There you go.
Take that back.
No.
Take that back.
I remember that. We're just found it.
Okay, and there's also peppers and plants that people brought. Seeds, organic stuff. Bye, everybody.